It's been such a fun day today. I don't know how you guys are feeling, but it's been awesome. The organizers have been awesome. Thank you, Samsung Create, for inviting me and letting me be part of this. This is awesome. Ada, I will find another word apart from awesome to explain great things. So today's talk is more of a story. I'd love to share with you some of the experiences we had with our Mozilla Dev Outreach, Dev Marketing team back in 2017 on what we called our Mozilla Developer Roadshow. And it says here how I survived 57 events in 1 year, but my colleague, Alex Spivak, who'll be delivering the MDN talk tomorrow, actually reminded me that I did more than 57. It was more like 80, but I don't know about you, that number seems kind of unbelievable. And then on top of that, we actually run a lot of external sponsorships, and we support a lot of local meetups through our Mozilla Outreach as well. So there's a lot of incredible work that goes beyond our developer outreach team that I'm super proud to be part of. So thank you for letting me share this story with you. And I hope you do have some questions in the end. I'd be more than happy to answer. So what is the Mozilla Developer Roadshow? Well, once upon a time, there was a whole bunch of really eager and curious staff members at Mozilla who actually said, you know, we could abuse the search engine and look at what developers want and need, or we can actually get our act together, put a program out for 2017, go out there where developers are, meet them, listen to them, talk to them, and gather real life data about what we can do as a company to make the web a better place. And so we did this grassroots outreach. Instead of having one large conference and trying to talk at developers and then run around trying to connect and get Q&A, we did a series of smaller events that we called roadshows. And we went around to a lot of locations. And the first thing that we really wanted to do was start out somewhere where it was out of the quote-unquote Silicon Valley echo chamber, right? We're all here, we think we know the persona of a developer, we think we know what a developer looks like, thinks like, feels like, want to hear from companies, but actually it's a different story. So if you see some of the stats that I have here, we started out in February 17th of 2017 in Kansas City. It may be a surprise to some people, it may not. And then we ended in Germany in November 17th, and in between we did a lot more. And in total, to give you just some stats, we estimate that on site at these events, we reached about 5,000 developers. But of course, we had our online component as well through all of our social media channels, our blog posts, et cetera. And we estimate about 100,000 developers that we reach. So if you are sitting in the audience and you too want to develop a global roadshow program for your developers, and you're like, what's some of the metrics that came out of this? Just on top of the head, you would say reach about 5,000, 100,000 K plus. And I love this picture because it's a compilation of all the different types of developers, and this isn't all of it, by the way, right? Like it's a little snapshot of developers that we met that did not fit your hoodie wearing, California or Seattle or even New York developer, and it was really nice to hear from these folks as to what their needs and wants were. So again, going out into the world and learning about developers, we had to adapt a lot about our programs, what we did and what we wanted to talk about. But what remained consistent and universal in every single one of our program approach was we wanted to make sure that every event was inclusive and welcoming, friendly to all. And as the Samsung Create conference opened with a code of conduct, we did too for every single event. And not only did we just have a code of conduct, posted up there, we made sure that people knew how to approach us, what to talk about, and such. And we're really happy that this actually, again, inspired other regions of the world to even understand what a code of conduct means, right? So for example, we went out to Malaysia, and actually they don't have a problem with a lot of women attending highly technical events. Like Python is a very popular language, and you will sometimes see 70% of real coding developers showing up who are women. And of course, because it's Malaysia, there is different cultural diversities, religious diversities, and they're all showing up. And they don't do a code of conduct in a lot of sense. They all feel like they all understand how to behave towards one another. That may not be the case for us, and we just at Mozilla thought this would be a good way to set the standard and the bar of how we want to behave. So my name is Sandra Persing. I work at Mozilla, like I've just said. I work on global developer programs. We do a lot of outreach, and I am part of our brand team. So my mission at work is to make sure that we pair the brand Mozilla with a lot of awesome tech that you see out there. You may know us best for the Firefox browser, but we actually do a lot more than that. And that was also another part of the Developer Roadshow, to tell people what else are we doing out in the real world. And apart from that, I also work with our Women Who Code team. They're headquartered here, but they're also global with over, I think, 70 plus communities. And we ran a Connect conference, and the Connect 2018 conference is happening next week in San Francisco if you're interested. I also run DevRel Summit with my partner, Barry. And I'm now one of the organizers with another Samsung employee, Damon, who's running this conference for the WebXR team here. So a lot of different ways, again, I get to get myself out there and meet with a lot of the different communities that make, quote unquote, developers. So what are we going to talk about here today? I'll just give you a little bit more details about what we did planning this Developer Roadshow. We did focus on Asia, so that was an intense segment of our roadshow that I'm really proud to share. And some of the learnings, like what came out of this whole thing that we can replicate. If you're not familiar with our company, Mozilla is an open source nonprofit company. So there is a foundation side that does a lot of advocacy work as well, web literacy being one of the most, and of course privacy. And then we have the corporate side, and the corporate side actually builds our products, Firefox of course being our first and foremost, since we are a web company. And we want to make sure that we are out there championing accessibility to all. So again, things like making sure we have a code of conduct, things like we're making sure that we are listening to our developers, that all fits under our mission. And apart from having many employees, we have about 40% distributed working teams, by the way. Not many people go to the office. We have over 10,000 contributors working with us. Now that's really important because that made my job incredibly easier, I think, than what other companies can do if they were to do a Developer Roadshow. I was able to go out there and find local speakers. I was able to find experts in Budapest. I was able to find experts out in Northern Europe and again in Asia, because they were all part of our Mozilla community, and they let me know that they were interested in being part of the roadshow, speaking, teaching, help facilitating and organizing. And so in many ways, that gave the roadshow a very unique flavor. You may think, oh, roadshow, there's a band, like a rock band, and there's a lead singer, guitarist, blah, 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 and they travel on a bus or a plane, and they're that core group that travels everywhere to all the regions, and they have their schedules published. Well, we published our schedule, and we actually were very flexible about amending that schedule around the world, but we did not keep a core team. What we did to plan this all out was to make sure that we had a really robust program and put that program into nice packages. For example, if we're talking about the language Rust, we're not going to put CSS together. Right? That doesn't make any sense. Like, that community wouldn't care for it. Or if we're talking about web VR, we're going to really focus on that, get some different aspects of web VR, bring equipment, demo, and make that into a very robust program. So we were very conscientious of doing things like that. So lovely picture of one of our group shots. But again, it's not just about the staff at Mozilla. It's about the community as well. So just going to more of the products that we're working on, the three types of builds that we always talk about Firefox is, of course, our nightly dev edition and our general build. But then underneath all of that, this was what we had to do. So myself and the team, we had to look at all these programs, all these topics, and say, how can we package these together that actually makes sense for the developer community that we're talking to? Another example is when we went out to Kansas City, we didn't just say, hey, we're going to talk about the web browser and that's it, or we're going to talk about web VR. We actually did some legwork to figure out what they wanted to hear. And they said, you know what, we really want to talk about security. And we actually had a team out in Tulsa, Oklahoma, who was part of our HTTPS secure team. They wanted to talk about it. We were able to meet interest and pair that up correctly with the speakers. And throughout all of it, again, we did a lot of programming that met each location. And as you can see, we didn't just go to one location at one time. Sometimes we repeated some of the cities because that just made sense. Like New York, huge location, different interests. So we were able to repeat the location and do different types of programming. This was the first one that I just mentioned, the Kansas City, Tulsa, Oklahoma team that we stood by. One thing I'd like to say is we did a lot of adjustments on the road. So you see those first t-shirts we made, we're like, that looks awesome on screen and print. And then when we wore it, we're like, hey, it's getting covered up by the podium. Nobody can see our logo. When we take pictures, a lot of people like crossing their arms over. So let's switch that up. Right. Our banner, we also changed a lot because we're like, hey, it looks good, but it's not the best. And we made some adjustments there as well. We wanted a call to action on the bottom, but then it gets covered up again by either an obstruction or people standing in front of it. A lot of people like to stand in front of it. And then the other part that was really wonderful was that we internally said this Mozilla Developer Roadshow is a great way to do marketing, outreach, and brand presence. But what we didn't anticipate and what was a great outcome was we supported other local events. This is the Google Dev Fest in Kansas City to also be extremely successful because we partnered with them and added more content and program value. I think this was one of their biggest Dev Fest in KC. And just for laughs, so because I was so involved in this roadshow and there was over 57, there was a moment where it was actually my birthday, and the organizers that we collaborated with put up this slide, and I was very happy about that. So speaking about collaborators, again, working with community members is a huge plus. You can't do it alone. You can't be the only person. Having that flexibility to bring in local speakers always helps to make sure that your programming is dedicated to your community as well as really robust. And having some fun on the road is always important because if nobody's having fun, it's a really boring ride. So I'll go a little bit into Asia now and speak about something that we did really intensely. So I just said, hey, we were really flexible. We sourced local speakers, and we made sure that we were adapting to the needs of the community. Well, when we were in about Q3, Q4, we decided to try to keep at least a few core team members. We brought in a couple who were local, but as you can see, Ali's there, I'm the staff. We brought in Smashing Magazine as one of our collaborators to create more content throughout the events. And we hit about 5 cities locally within a span of 2 weeks. And this is in Vietnam, in Ho Chi Minh City. The one great thing that we learned about this group was there's a very robust VR, AR community, especially in the medical industry. And in university, Andres Pui is one of the directors and professors out there in RMIT University in Vietnam. They are teaching students to get right into AR and VR technology, and mostly native, but they want web. They want open source. It's something that's quite important in this region. And we met this team on the upper left-hand corner, who was really proud, showing us what they've built and asking Mozilla and asking our team, what can we do in order to move this and port this all onto the web. And this is something that our engineering team just was thrilled to hear, that there were segments of the globe that at first they thought, they're not going to be interested in web VR because of XYZ, I don't know, connection issues, connectivity issues, maybe, political issues and whatnot, and going, no, there's the students, but also the commercial activity around this technology is really robust. So that was really good to know. And other collaborators that we brought on were not only just speakers, but we brought in artists. If you're interested in web VR technology right now, or just VR, AR technology, XR technology, a lot of who we call creators are incredibly interested in what's going on, especially with Mozilla. And this is Karis Loke. She is an illustrator in Penang, Malaysia, and she never tried A-frame. She never had a HMD headset on her head. And she was just really getting into it. And the demo right now she's playing with in this picture is A-Painter, one of our demos under the A-Frame library and framework. And we did a little video with her as well, and I'll share the URL later, where she's explaining on this content about, wow, this really opens up my eye. And again, this feedback back to our team, based mostly in the US and working on code and technology that they may be just very focused on in one group and one genre, one geography, they're getting some really rich feedback about how different segments of the world, different users are thinking about it that can actually help them build better products at the end. And I'm sure you can recognize a speaker up here on my right. Not only was this Mozilla Developer Roadshow that only featured Mozilla developers or community members or staff members, we truly believed that incorporating, collaborating, including speakers who are incredibly passionate about our technology actually was one of the most authentic ways to talk about and share knowledge to the community. So on the left, the Rust Hungary event, we actually had one of our tech speakers be part of our roadshow. And on the bottom, we had Rachel Andrew, now editor-in-chief of Smashing Magazine, teaching a CSS course for the BBC designers in there. So we also went into a lot of corporate communities to talk about our technology. And of course, we have Ada. Forever excited about A-Frame, giving an A-Frame workshop at our Mozilla SF office as part of our roadshow. So that was incredibly fun as well. So again, I'm part of the developer relations community for sure. I'm out there trying to understand how to make sure that marketing and branding is not so markety and brand and salesy driven, especially for our developer community. Developers are incredibly savvy audience members. They don't want to be sold to. Yet they love t-shirts, they love information, intel, any tools, tips, and tricks that makes their jobs easier, makes their lives easier, coding, anything that helps. And I always put in a cat picture because I'm like, hey, we all love cats, right? And then the other part of the metrics that we put into, say, this Developer Roadshow was a great success for us was not only did we do some of the basic things that an event organizer or a marketing brand team or Developer Roadshow would count, right? Like attendees, did you actually put the show together? Did you put an event together and get that off the ground? Did you get people super excited and sitting down and attending the event? Did you get social media hits? And I'm sure you are all very familiar with all these quote unquote metrics that your team asks if you were to say, please give me X amount of budget so I can go there and put on an event. We actually felt that 2017 was a lot about exploration, understanding our community, but also identifying local leaders and helping them, so nurturing them to become our advocates in that area. So Huijing Chen was part of our Developer Roadshow Asia. We were connected with her through Jen Simmons. We needed a CSS grid expert speaker. I didn't want to fly in somebody from the US to Singapore to talk about CSS. I was like, there must be somebody in the Singapore community who's interested in this and who can speak. So she became part of our show. She actually, started out talking very well, and then she improved tremendously by the time we did our 5th show. And we have somebody like Jeremy Keith, who's actually a well-seasoned speaker and very well known in the web development community, being able to compliment on HJ just being an awesome speaker with us. And we also found a lot of engineers at Mozilla whom, we knew them from that quote, beyond the screen, behind the code, but we never brought to the front to be able to talk and share what they've been working on. And so another component was not only collaborating with the community, but also within our own company. So yes, marketing and brand drove the initiative, but we had all of our engineers on board and being really excited, bought in to this roadshow plan, which was incredibly important for us. And we were able to have Daisuke, out there in Hong Kong, talking about what he's been doing as a web animation engineer for years at Mozilla, what what he's been able to do to prove out this concept. And again, we captured him on video because we're like, it's not just about one and done, one event, and we forget about what you've done. We want to actually share this within our company, outside of it, within our Mozilla YouTube channels. So we had it all recorded, and if you want to take a moment, it's Mozilla Dev Roadshow videos on YouTube. So, just to summarize really quickly, what did we learn from all of this? Like, absolutely, content is king, right? I'm a program manager. I have to make sure that, are we talking about Rust to the right audience? Are we talking about web VR to the right audience? Are we talking about web extensions to the right audience? Are we talking about securities to the right audience? And what is that context of the program, right? Like, are we actually speaking to developers, or is there a mix of executives, brand people, and developers? So all of that matters. Adapting quickly. T-shirts that fail, get rid of it. Print some really cool ones that will work with your team. Collaterals that don't work. You print out a lot of postcards with, go visit this website, and everybody's tossing it in the trash. All right, well, stop printing those and stop carrying them in your suitcase. VR rigs, if you have one and it's so overwhelmed by people excited to try it out, bring two. A lot of things that we just needed to adapt to make it happen. We made that happen. And there's a few more here, and I think another thing that was really important was we had to think beyond surveys to get feedback. Again, outside, well, actually, I think within the US too, surveys are kind of useless. Like after this, if I were to give you a survey, even if it was in print, and be like, how was my session? Did you enjoy my talk? I asked all the leading questions. I'm not really sure what to do with that data afterwards. So it made our team go back to the drawing board after the Developer Roadshow was over and think, all right, how do we collect better data? Like, yes, this was really intense. It was something that is not quote unquote scalable. What else can we do? So we're absolutely back in the drawing board in 2018 to think about, what else can we do to get better feedback, better data, and incorporate that again, not only to the engineering development cycle, but also to our entire company holistically, our brand outreach initiative, our marketing outreach initiative to the developer community. I mentioned a few times that every time we went to a space, we captured videos, we did interviews. That's awesome, and everybody thinks like, great, all you have to do is have a camera and go. Does not work. You need to have a plan. You need to script it out. You need to figure out what you're going to ask that person. You need a video director on site to be able to pull those people. You have to remember, it's people management. People sometimes don't know what to say on camera. You have to help them figure out, how to be their best on film. And then you have to have post-production plans, and that takes a lot of time and that takes a lot of resources. One quick fail that we adjusted immediately was not budgeting enough for post-production work and saying, oh, well, it's gonna only take us 1 week and it's going to cost us $2K. Well, guess what? Sometimes it takes 3 times as long and 10 times more of the amount. So that's another thing in the planning process that you really want to think about. So now I want to talk a little bit more about, since we learned all these great things about the Developer Roadshow, like what are we doing in 2018? Hey, Sandra, a question I get asked a lot is, will you be doing another roadshow in 2018? Well, quick answer is no. It's not scalable. If any company thinks, we're just going to keep on doing roadshows, and I've actually heard that roadshows are in the plans for, some of my colleagues. I always tell them, hey, make sure you have enough budget, make sure you can run with it, but it's not scalable. Don't expect to keep on running this year on year on year on year. It tires people out. People kind of get tired of it, and you will run out of funds quickly. So what are we going to do this year in 2018? Well, I published a strategy called, Why Creators Are Important for 2018, because one of the most important things I've learned from the Huijing Chen example is there's an incredible amount of value identifying, those wonderful people who want to work with you, who will speak about your technology on your behalf, but just need your support, your company support, your marketing support, your engineering support. So the first thing we're going to do is nurture whom we call our creators in tech. And you might say, well, why are we calling them creators instead of developers? Well, another thing about those different faces, the many faces of developers are a lot of developers outside of the US, Western world don't really call themselves developers. They might call themselves just web designers, or I code, or I do IT work. A lot of segments that are true full stack developers just call themselves IT. So, and artists like Karis, she's actually a technical artist. She can code, but she will never come to a developer event. So by calling them creators, those who create for the web, especially for Mozilla, that expanded our outreach and allowed our strategy to grow with our audience. And again, including creativity into that code, it's not just about the code, it's about what can we do with that code. So we incorporated a lot of that into our 2018 strategy. So again, this was the 2018, the year of the creators. This was really supported well by not only our marketing team and brand team, but our engineering team as well, which was awesome. And the first things that we did in 2018 was we went to Sundance for the first time. Bringing Mozilla to the Sundance Film Festival was awesome. And we talked about what it meant to have VR in film. It's nothing new, actually. It's something that's growing year on year, having a lot more VR content incorporated into film. But what does that mean? I mean, I go into a movie theater. I don't want to pay an extra 2x for a 3D film right now because I just don't see value. What does it mean if you create VR content for the consumer audience? Will they watch it? Will they pay? Does that make sense? So there was a lot of discussion about that. Can VR be used for good? Can we use VR technology to create a sense of social awareness? We partnered with Noni de la Peña from Emblematic Studios to really get into that portion. And she first built her technology on the Unity platform, and we were able to port it onto the web because her team was like, we want to get more people accessing our content, and we believe the web is the right platform for it. So that was the discussions we had. So when we were at Sundance, we actually met with a lot of people who said, this is really interesting what Mozilla is doing. Would you like to come to Tribeca and talk about VR and web VR and what that means for creators, film directors, and coders out there? So we'll be heading out to Tribeca to try to find our creators and nurture them. And we're also doing something. We're inserting our creativity into code with events like JSConf EU, which is a highly technical event, incredibly popular with JavaScript developers, front-end developers. It sells out within minutes, and yet we're bringing art. We're working with Ian Brill, a technical artist. He's going to be showing a visceral experience of WebAssembly. And that, to me, just blows my mind. We have Lynn Clark and Trevor Smith from our engineering team working together with Josh from our dev advocacy team. We'll have a website up to explain what this is all about. And we have Ian just really incredibly excited that a company like Mozilla reached out to him all the way in Pittsburgh. We flew out there for 24 hours to actually see his installation, to talk to him, to get to know him, and to, again, support and nurture his work, because it's so important to see what does it mean when code gets super creative and it goes beyond the developer community into the consumer community. And again, coming from the events side, coming from the brand side, coming from a lot of questions like, well, you put on a great meetup, but what is the quote-unquote ROI? Well, here it is. We get to support the rest of our team creating incredible content that outlasts the event. Again, on-site and online are joint strategies that go hand in hand. We have online content that gets produced on a regular cycle, and the cadence is just keeping that momentum up. So, by doing the event, by spending money, by pulling those engineers away from their desk and doing, great coding and being part of our team to speak to developers, speak to consumers, speak to creators, we also channel content and materials that can be used by our content creation team to talk more about what's going on in the company. So that's the umbrella and ROI of everything that comes out of doing these events and the road shows and everything else that you can think of. So with that, I'll just say it's been really fun 2017. 2018 is looking even more exciting, and thank you so much.